Bone Thugs and Harmony sampled a
Coming back to
song,
that? Oh, yeah?
"Friends." It's like an old '70s song,
Uh-huh,
right? And
uh-huh.
well, you learn who your friends are in tough times.
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely. Hopefully, you learn that you have friends in tough times, but we can always be a friend. You've got a friend.
Now I'm going to start singing Toy Story. Instead of that, let's do this.
You got a team, here's a word to the wise. You want to dominate your league? Go to football, guys.
Football, I'm living in a fantasy. Football, got everybody mad at me. Football, cause every game I had to win. Football, I gotta be a champion. Football, I'm living in a fantasy.
You've got to be a champion, and that's why we're here for you on the Week 6 Waiver Wire. We're going to go through Sigmund Bloom's upgrades, downgrades, and Waiver Wire report. And of course, we always have a lot to get to here in this National Football League. But first, I want you to check out the Monday injury rounds. Adam Hutchison writes those for us at footballguys.com. And oh boy, Anthony Richardson just can't get through a game. I don't believe the second opinion. Did he already get the second opinion? Either way, we'll discuss it because Gardner Minshew's going to start for, let's say, a month. All right, maybe it's a little bit more, maybe it's a little bit less. Who knows? But here we go again with the Colts rookie starting quarterback. So at the quarterback position, we don't have Minshew just yet, Bloom. He's a little bit further down. But let's talk about Sam Howell. Let's talk about Matthew Stafford if they're out there. 12 to 25% for Sam Howell. Stafford is sitting at a crisp 10 to 20%.
Yeah, and boy, there's a lot to talk about this week. So, Sam Howell, the good news is when he's bad, he's still good for fantasy because he's going to keep chucking it all through the second half. And you could do just fine with Sam Howell. Actually, so far this year, it has been a good year for quarterback production. There have been a lot of right answers at quarterback in fantasy drafts, and it looks like Sam Howell is one of them, partially because of the defense. So this week against Atlanta looks good, and if you're starting Sam Howell, you're probably doing fine, and you're probably going to be fine. I know Matthew Stafford didn't exactly take off for fantasy last week, but you saw that Cooper Kupp is back, fully back. We'll see what happens against Arizona. We saw Joe Burrow get back, fully back against them. So these guys are both viable starting quarterbacks, and maybe they could be available on short bench, thin waiver wires because everyone else sees is going to be diving in at running back and wide receiver this week.
Yeah, they're diving in, and you're still just trying to figure some stuff out with Kyler Murray, 5 to 10%.
Yeah.
Baker the Baby Maker is 3 to 5%. Desmond Ritter
Yeah.
is at 3 to 5%. Maybe they're figuring out, and we're still not yet to Gardner Minshew. So let's talk about this cluster, and then we'll get to the rest of the guys.
Right. Kyler, I noticed Kyler's numbers dropped a little bit, because like maybe we're looking more like week 9, week 10. Arizona's fortunes are falling off a little bit. We were feeling better about him coming back if the team was winning and competitive. We're wondering if they're going to be more patient. So still, and that's another thing, as I said, that quarterback has actually been pretty productive this year. So you're not feeling, a couple weeks ago, it felt a little more bleak at quarterback. It was looking up. Part of the reason looking up a little bit, at least, is Desmond Ritter had another good game, scored again as a rusher, and also gets Washington this week. So Kenny Pickett and Jordan Love are on bye. You're not exactly starting either of them. But hey, if you need somebody, super flex 2 quarterback leagues, DFS, that kind of stuff, maybe it's Desmond Ritter again. And Baker Mayfield, he's back from his bye. It's another thing we need to talk about. Every week we go through the waiver wire, we're talking about players who had good games, but there are also players who might have been dropped in the bye week crunch. Baker Mayfield has been pretty solid. Not exactly excited to start Baker against Detroit. Yeah, not excited to start him against Detroit. Maybe there's garbage time, like Bryce Young last week. Atlanta, Buffalo. Buffalo's lost a lot of players on that defense. Houston, are they good? Is that defense good? It seems like it, like Detroit. So I'm not loving starting Baker Mayfield, but as we go through the bye week gauntlet, you could do a lot worse for depth. Waiting to hear a little more about how Mike Evans' hamstring is. And I think to get to the Gardner Minshew talk, I'm looking at their schedule. Jacksonville this week, okay, and then Cleveland, then New Orleans, and those sound like rough games. But maybe Minshew magic can overcome that.
Yeah, it seems like he just doesn't care. Like, and that's
In a
that
good
can
way.
benefit you. Honestly,
Yeah.
it can benefit you because that's the sphincter's not very tight. We'll leave that one alone. And sorry,
Right.
Joe, but like he just nothing
Right.
rattles him. He's Gardner Minshew, man. Like, yeah, he's whatever, baby. He's got it. 1% for him. Bryce Young, 1% there. Tyrod Taylor, 1% there. We're waiting to see what happens.
Yeah.
It's a revenge game. When you face your old
Right.
team, it's not always a revenge game, okay? But he's facing the Bills potentially. So Tyrod Taylor might be out there. Dorian Thompson Robinson, very deep 2 QB superflex leagues. And yes, there
Right.
is Bailey Zappi, and maybe after the way Mac Jones played, it should be 2% instead of 1%. But either way, Zappy's coming.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, probably. That's not good. Cease, why is Gardner Minshew, why does he have that aura of not caring? Because, think about what Gardner Minshew's path in life was supposed to be and what it actually has ended up being. He never should have been an NFL quarterback. Look at that guy. I mean, he should have been a meme, but not an NFL quarterback. Now he's both. So he has the enlightenment of knowing that he's figured something out. For fantasy, though, again, tougher matchups. But he will keep, we'll talk about Josh Downs. He will keep that passing game pretty robust for fantasy. Bryce Young had a robust passing game, garbage time against Detroit. Cease, can we talk really quick about Carolina for a second? Because Frank Reich is just coming out and saying that David Tepper is engaged, I think is the word he used. He said there's not fun meetings. And then was it Stephen Holder? I'm not sure who put it out there. Sorry if it wasn't Stephen Holder. That it's not a very well-kept secret that the ownership was part of the decision to take Bryce Young. We're talking about Bryce Young, right? So this isn't really a tangent.
Yeah.
Tepper
did it before anyway. What was it? And he for sure, he's basically like a wannabe Dan Snyder. Hopefully
That's
with less
horrible.
sexual harassment allegedly or whatever. And sorry, Joe, or YouTube, please, YouTube, don't demonetize me because I'm talking about what Dan Snyder did allegedly or whatever I have to say. But he did that with Will Greer. That's why Norv Turner quit. Norv was like, I'm not going to play him. He's like, play him. And so Norv Turner quit. We're going back years, man. But Tepper's been, oh God, I wish I could cuss. Tepper's been flipping it up for a while now.
Yeah. It's never good, right? It's never good. Over the football guys base camp, I said, when has it ever been good when an owner leaned in on the football side? And Bob laughed. Bob Henry, love you, Bob, said, Al Davis? Al Davis. That's a good one. That's how far back you have to go.
Different. Yeah, he's just different.
He changed football. He changed the way we play football. Bryce Young's not going to do that, but you get some garbage time potentially, against Miami this week, especially. Not that worked out for Daniel Jones. Tyrod Taylor, speaking of that. But Jones could play this week. Yeah, whatever. We're super flex leagues. Dorian Thompson Robinson, or maybe PJ Walker. We'll see. Trading Josh Dobbs is not exactly working out well for Cleveland right now. And whoever it's going to be, the story here is Deshaun Watson's shoulder after the bye. It was just because of a hit. It was going to be fine. Maybe it's not fine. Mac Jones, definitely not fine. Is Bailey Zappi really going to change anything? If they swapped out, the little commercials, we switched the Patriots quarterbacks and see if anyone noticed. I mean, are we even going to notice for fantasy football? Even that, probably not.
Do they do taste tests anymore? You know what I mean?
Pepsi challenge.
Yeah,
I always say Pepsi challenge. Is that a
blind taste test?
Yeah. These soft drinks, the whole soft drink war was a big part of our childhood. When I think about it, New Coke, Crystal Pepsi.
Hey, trying to feed us sugar and GMOs. Thanks. Corporations. Corn syrup, Monsanto. This is the show they really came for. Let's just go right now. Let's go. So see, it's because of the misery. We're getting to running back and wide receiver now. Misery. Have you figured it out yet, folks? Fantasy football is about misery and persevering. Hopefully. Or submitting. Saying uncle. Let's get to the running backs. Now, again, Bloom, you'll have to explain how you look at these and who's available.
Sure.
We've got the chat room saying, can we just talk about Jaleel McLaughlin? He's not out there. I mean, he shouldn't be out there. Maybe he is. I don't know.
Yeah. I would say 20 to 40% if he's out there.
Yeah, and in certain leagues, like for example, I've held Tyjae Spears forever. Love him. He's at the top of the running back list. By the way, we've got to do the injury rounds. Our running back position. Roshan Johnson's got a concussion projecting week 7 return. Khalil Herbert with an ankle injury projecting week 9 return. Who did they bring back yesterday? Damn it, off the top of my head. Got him from the Dolphins, brought him back to the Bears. Anyway, we won't be talking about him. Maybe we will be. That's how deep it goes. James Conner's got a knee injury again. Devon Achan, knee injury. So, yes, pain is what you get. Sound like Mr. T, right? Pain, fool. Like, that's what you get. So, Tyjae Spears, you know, a lot of leagues he's not out there, but I guess he is, Bloom, because it's on your report. So please explain this, go through it. Because Jeff Wilson, 15 to 30%, we got to talk about him because the Achan injury. Charbonnet, 12 to 25%. Roshan, who's banged up, 12 to 25%. Deontay Foreman, there's 10 to 20% as he might get a larger road with both Johnson and Herbert banged up. So take a deep breath, Bloom. It's time to go.
Yeah. And Cecil, let me take an aside here, as I always enjoy doing. And this is a moment, and we talked about this when Nick Chubb went down. Do you remember that? Fantasy football season makes time move so strangely. It seems so long ago. Nick Chubb, that feels like last season by now, right? Jeez. But we said it, Cecil, when Nick Chubb went down. Well, next week it'll be somebody else stepping on a landmine, or maybe 3 people stepping on a landmine at once. Like, you know, you hear the landmine, and before you even process it, Justin Jefferson, Devin Achan, Anthony Richardson, James Conner. You know, it's misery. And you think of, see, we prepare for our drafts, right? And we convince ourselves how smart we are. And we think of it like figure skating. Like, we're going to go and we're going to execute all of these nimble twists and jumps and nail all these decisions and put together this juggernaut, right? Yeah, it's like figure skating. If they allowed figure skaters to get like tackled or checked like hockey players, and you're still having to try to carry on, even the hurt, trying to do all these things that you plan on doing. It's not pretty. It's ugly. It's limping, sometimes limping to the finish line when you win a fantasy football championship, right? So to this week, and see Justin Jefferson, Devin Achan, these were on first. These guys were the reason you were in first place, right? Or doing well, 4-1 or whatever, right? So it's some of the best teams. James Conner has been a big hit. So you see fantasy football, giveth it, taketh away. It makes you feel so good because you were able to foresee that James Conner getting those touches, Arizona isn't as bad as everyone thinks, but it's bad because, yeah, James Conner doesn't stay healthy. And here we are. And this is where I'll say this also, Cecil. Do you like to do puzzles, like crossword puzzle? You like video games, like, you know, Wordle. Do you ever do the Wordle?
No, I would play PUBG every day. Like, yeah, I wish I had more time for that stuff, but yes,
No,
I don't mind that.
It's a puzzle. I mean, the video games you're doing are a puzzle. When I hear you talk about, when you were telling me about, you know, getting dropped in on the island in the battle royale, that's a puzzle. You know, they're all puzzles. It's just you like to do puzzles with words.
Life is a puzzle.
Yeah, and this waiver wire this week, it's a puzzle, right? This is actually stimulating and interesting from a fantasy football perspective. There's a lot of choices, right? There's a lot of chaos. There's a lot of players. There's how things are situated right now in these backfields. But then there's looking at what we know about the players, looking at the momentum. Where is it headed? And you make some, this is kind of like a week 1 waiver wire, Cecil. Like, when there's just so much that we're adjusting to, that your ability to make the right call, really you can benefit from it this week. Sorry, let's step through this. Tyjae Spears, I mean, and again, I'm using the 60% threshold on Yahoo, so I don't want to waste our time, but we finally saw him come through, and he looks tremendous. Jeff Wilson is the next guy here, and they activated him. Okay, 21-day window. He may or may not play this week against Carolina. We saw last year when it was Wilson and Mostert, they traded off good games for fantasy football when they were healthy, and that was a running game that isn't as good as this year's running game. I think it's really incontrovertible that this year's running game is more effective than last year's running game, year 2 with Mike McDaniel, right? So Wilson, I'm not saying break the bank for him, but as soon as he's healthy, he's the co-lead, arguably, at the very least, a useful situational back, like goal line, passing downs, trust, right? Experience together. So I'm not going to blame you if you go a little bit higher here. And I definitely think you should price enforce. Let's talk about this for a second, Cecil. If you don't have any of the players that went down, that doesn't mean you should be sitting on the sidelines, right? We're already getting to rock blocking time. And, spending 20% of your budget to try to keep somebody else from getting Wilson on the cheap, especially if it's one of those teams that needs a player. Charbonnet coming back from bye, potential league winner. Roschon Johnson. This one's and we'll talk, and let's throw in Dante Foreman in here. Roschon Johnson ahead of Dante Foreman, even though Dante Foreman should start this week, and maybe Johnson won't play. Johnson, remember, comes out of week 5 concussed. 3 extra days to clear concussion protocol. But with Khalil Herbert likely going on injured reserve, remember that seemed like that was going to be the biggest injury of the week. Now, what are we looking at 2, 3, 4 weeks from now? I think Johnson, but they were playing Johnson ahead of Foreman, even though Johnson is a rookie. Foreman could do something to change that this week against Minnesota, but I think that you have Roschon Johnson a little higher, and Roschon Johnson absolutely could be one of those guys that you miss on Jeff Wilson. You end up getting Roschon Johnson if he's out there, and you maybe get the more productive running back. It's possible with Chicago's offense coming on. And see, we're really just scratching the surface here. And again, Jaleel McLaughlin, if he's out there, would be the number one priority, because 2 weeks in a row, just like Devin Achane, 2 weeks in a row is enough. Like, if you show me, hey, give me 9, 10 touches, and I'm going to get 100-ish yards and a touchdown, yeah, I'm going to invest in that.
By the way, it was Darrington Evans. I was like, no wonder I didn't.
Oh,
remember.
yeah.
App State,
Tennessee.
Yeah, Darrington
Yeah.
Evans. Yeah, so we're talking about
In
Tyjae
North
Spears.
Carolina.
So we took up with the guy that was supposed to be Tyjae Spears. But
Right.
yeah, so we're going to watch now with that Chicago situation. And oh boy, here we go. And what's interesting is the seasons, Bloom. Fantasy football is like a road trip. Hell, life is like a road trip, right? You've taken plenty of road trips on your fish tour days.
Yeah.
But the people that start the trip with you don't always end the trip with you. So you may win it all in your fantasy league because you're scrambling, and your team may look completely different.
Absolutely.
Completely different. You got to think of it like Dumb and Dumber when you're riding around the shaggin' wagon and you see the guys on the side of the road, like, pick them up. Hey, pick them up. Here we go, right? And here we go for your fantasy team. Amari DiMercado, 5
here
to
we are.
10% in Arizona. Now, that's an interesting move, because I am the person who said forever and ever and ever. I was like, hey, Arizona, you love them. You absolutely love James Conner, but Keontae Ingram was my guy, and Keontae Ingram can't even get a jersey on game day.
Right.
So it's Amari DiMercado who's up next. I'll still put a pin in Keontae because I love him.
We're going to talk about Keontae. Yeah.
We're going to get to him a little bit later. Even Tony Jones is there as well. But let's continue on through that list. Upgrades, downgrades, waiver wire report. Kendre Miller is 5 to 10%. Salvin Ahmed is 3 to 5%. And hell, bring in everybody else, whether it's Chris Brooks, Jordan Mason, Craig Reynolds. Like, these are the names to know. So we got a nice cluster here at the backside.
Yeah. And Cease, like you were talking about, you don't end the journey with the people you begin with. It reminds me of how anytime I win a fantasy football championship, I look at my starting lineup and I try to retrace the steps of how did I end up with that player. It's just a fun exercise, and it illustrates usually what you're saying, Cease. And it also reminds me of the philosophical problem of Theseus's ship. Theseus, he had a ship, Cease, and he kept replacing it one plank at a time, one piece of wood at a time. And eventually he replaced the whole ship, like every piece. Is it still Theseus's ship, even though doesn't have anything physically in common with the original Theseus's ship? It's your team as you change and slap on all those parts to keep it on the road. Paris to Dakar, keep it on the road. These running backs can help you at least, hopefully, keep it on the road, maybe steal a win. Amari DiMercado. And the reason, Cease, we're not talking about Keontae Ingram, at least as a top priority, and I want to find out more. I'm shaking the bushes to find out more, because Keontae Ingram's been missing with a neck injury. Neck. Not on injured reserve, but neck. And that's Darrell Williams is there, I think, right? So, yeah, Tony Jones. But Amari DiMercado had a touchdown last week. Cardinals aren't looking quite as much like a darling overachiever as they were in the first few weeks. See them against the Rams this weekend. But you could do worse than starting DiMercado this week, and we'll be watching the practice reports on Keontae Ingram. I mean, if I see Keontae Ingram's practicing in full by the end of the week, if I knew that was going to happen, he might be ahead of DiMercado on this list. Kendre Miller. So this is where you jab and move, right? Other people are picking up running backs for opportunity right now and spending some significant part of what money they have left. You might just sprinkle a few little units out there to pick up. Maybe Kendre Miller's out there, getting more involved as a pass receiver, getting more snaps. Again, Tony Jones is gone, so there's no question about Tony Jones. Now, Jamal Williams is going to be back, and I suppose we could talk a little bit about Jamal Williams as a preemptive pickup back in a few weeks, hopefully. But that's not sexy for fantasy. I don't even know if you're going to see him get goal line carries ahead of Alvin Kamara. Certainly not in the quantity that he got in Detroit. Kendre Miller as a receiver looking good and certainly has that rookie juice, especially if Alvin Kamara goes down, you might have something there. Salvin Ahmed, he was a healthy scratch last week. But what do we know about Ahmed? He has that home run Raheem Mostert H-hand burst.
Mm-hmm.
He's got it. I mean, he was the San Francisco undrafted free agent back, right? You see the family tree, right? So Ahmed, now this is where the Miami backfield gets interesting. Let's go and throw Chris Brooks in here too. Okay, you've got Mostert, Wilson, who may or may not play this week, not known for their durability. Rarely do these guys stay on track. Mostert actually stayed pretty healthy last year, so he maybe deserves, erasing the red cross next to him. We'll see. And then you have Ahmed, who was already hurt this year. I think it was also neck head. So let's talk about Chris Brooks. And depending on how long benches are, the best move this week might be just throwing one unit at Chris Brooks while everyone's fighting over all these other backs, and then just let the chips fall as they may. Now, Miami has a week 10 bye. I think we're going to see H-Han back around week 11. But still, this running game is explosive, is putting up numbers. And I think any of these guys can make it work. So Chris Brooks is there also. Jordan Mason, looking good in garbage time. And here's the thing about Elijah Mitchell, Cease, right? Elijah Mitchell's going to get healthy. He's going to be the backup, and we're going to say, oh, pick Elijah Mitchell back up. And then what's going to happen when Elijah Mitchell gets on the field?
It's going to get hurt.
He's going to get hurt. And we're going to be back to Jordan Mason, right? So he's already like a preemptive pickup and a pickup for right now, depending on if Mitchell can get healthy. And we know this running game's good. So again, maybe the best move this week while everyone's fighting over this running backs is just pick Jordan Mason. Little Jordan Mason. Plug him into this offense. How productive would he be? Christian McCaffrey has gotten hurt in the past. And let me get to Netflix. It seemed like last week, Zonovan Knight was not part of the picture. Zonovan Knight, surprise UDFA contributor for the Jets last year. Enter Craig Netflix Reynolds, who made the team as third running back, kinda. They released him with an understanding they were going to bring him back. But he gets in garbage time last week, looking good. Jahmyr Gibbs, hamstring. Dave Montgomery, already been hurt. And bless David Montgomery, because it's part of what makes him such a wonderful running back to watch, to have on your fantasy team, to have on the team you root for in the NFL. But this is how he got hurt, right? He doesn't ever give up. He doesn't give up on any touch. And, that leads where it leads. So there's Reynolds. And the other part of Reynolds, Cease, is you're getting in on the Detroit offense. Don't we want to just get in on the Detroit offense however we can at this point?
Yes. That's one of those things. It's like Miami. It's like throwing the units out there. Like, I just want a piece of that.
Yeah.
Right? You want a piece of that. And sure, everyone else is going to be scrambling for other pieces in Miami. You're going to get a piece with Chris Brooks, right? So with Detroit, you got to think of it the same way. The same exact way, Bloom.
Yeah.
Take a breath, baby. Take a breath. Because coming up on Friday, a personal note. And I'm always buying comic book collections.
Oh,
when I can. So
putting the signs up around town.
No, I don't
pay cash for comic book collections.
I don't, but I say it on air locally, and I'll have listeners reach out and be like, "Hey, I got some comics I want to sell." I'm like, "Okay," and I'll tell you if you got something. I'll tell you if you don't got something. But on Friday, I'm going to an estate sale with some very, very nice collection, and we'll see what I can get from that. But I bring up comic books, one, because they make me happy.
Okay.
Two, because Mark asked this. And this goes back to Jaleel
Oh,
McLaughlin.
yeah.
And I want to be very careful with what I say about this. I have not tested my key yet. Today is the day. If
Okay.
I know if I got my key and credentials removed. So if I can get in the building, everything's okay, kind of. Then I have to go to the locker room and make sure no one kicks my ass. But I'm not really talking about the players. I'm talking mostly about Sean Payton, but that's the guy that runs the show. So Mark asks, when is the Broncos fire sale starting? The answer is Friday. The answer is Friday. And the phone calls have already started. Other people have had this report anyway. I know, I think James Palmer's reported stuff like that. I know Diana Rossini had the Broncos are hesitant, and they're not. Okay, like they'll say that because they're trying to get more. Because if you go, it's like going to a yard sale, Bloom. Do you?
Right.
I don't want to go Gary V on you, but like you could turn this into flipping money, flipping A, go to the yard sale, boy. That's what you do. That's how you win in life. I'm Gary V. I'm gonna buy the Jets, but going to yard sales anyway. Like you go to yard sale and you have a $2 sticker on your little rubber ducky or whatever, and you're like, give you a quarter, and usually the person's like, okay, how about $1? Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what the Broncos are doing right now. Like, we're not going to trade it. We're a little hesitant. No, they're not. No, they're not. Just like me buying comic books, if you give them a fair deal, they're going to say yes. They're going to say yes. And that doesn't mean Jaleel McLaughlin's getting traded. But
No.
would that backfield look different? Maybe. I doubt Javonte, who's banged up anyway. And again, they didn't practice yesterday. They play Thursday. Every player's walking on eggshells. They didn't even talk about Nathaniel Hackett last week. Apparently the Jets did. They're all worried about this teardown that's coming. That's when Randy Gregory got moved. It was like a shockwave through the locker room. So could we be talking about more wide receivers moving on up? Brandon Johnson and Marvin Mims? Are they going to get rid of Judy and Sutton? So anyway, I don't want to belabor that, but because Mark asked and because it's a Broncos show.
Oh, yeah.
And this could impact, because why is Jaleel McLaughlin not playing more? He's clearly the guy. And we've clearly all seen that he's the guy. But anyway, I digress. Are we done with running backs? Are we done?
We are.
Did we get through running backs? Okay. Let's get to the wide receivers and the Monday injury rounds. Adam Hutchinson graciously has that for us at footballguys.com. Tank Dell has a concussion, projecting week 7 return. Wan'Dale Robinson has a concussion. He's one of those can't stay healthy guys, projecting a week 7 return there as well. And oh boy, Justin Jefferson. Let's talk about that situation. Let's get to the wide receivers, and let's get to your upgrades, downgrades, waiver wire report available at footballguys.com. Quite the cluster here at the top. So I hope you had a nice breather, Bloom, because you're about ready to do it again. Curtis Samuel,
maybe
Josh Downs, Joshua Palmer, Elijah Moore, KJ Osborne, Josh Reynolds, Rashee Rice. Nice cluster here at the top.
Yeah, there is. It is a cluster. But speaking of a cluster, real quick, Cecil, because you opened the door to this. It's a Broncos show. All right. Briefly, this is kind of like a little fantasy advice column tucked into the waiver wire column. I'm going to hit you with these quick, okay? Knowing that there could be upheaval in the Broncos wide receiver room. All right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So fantasy advice. Can Courtland Sutton still play? Go get Courtland Sutton or trade him because, hey, someone thinks something might be there when he goes to another team.
Sutton can still play.
Okay. Jerry Jeudy, was it really worth a first round pick, or is he just kind of lame limited? Does it depend where he ends up?
I would not be in on Jerry Jeudy no matter where he lands. I mean, unless we're talking Kansas City, Miami, something like that.
So, but what if Sutton's traded and Judy's not? Do we like Sutton, like Suttonless Jeudy in Denver?
Jeudy has to be the guy or else he loses focus. You have to be like, you're getting the ball, Jerry. And if you don't do that, then he doesn't focus. So, sorry.
Well, treacherous. And then what about so what does that mean for Marvin Mims? Like if one or both is traded, like
why is Sean Payton the guy that plays Marcus Colston when he comes 7th round out of Hofstra? You saw him at the 06 Shrine game. Why does he play Pierre Thomas when they draft Antonio Pittman? He never brings up Pittman's name. I think that's him thinking he's being nice. But anyway, why does he do all this? And then Mims can play, and he had a bad game last week. But Mims can play, McLaughlin can play, and he doesn't play him?
I don't know.
What?
That's-
Huh? Okay.
Well, give him time to learn. Maybe he's learning. So we'll see. We'll see. The reason I pause Cease to do that is, that's part of your picture. That's part of your picture if you just lost Justin Jefferson. And regardless, if you're engaged, there's that word, as a fantasy GM, then you're trying to see if there's some way you can benefit from every changing situation around the league. What's not seeming to change is that Curtis Samuel is getting targeted ahead of Jahan Dotson. And Sam Howell's going to throw it a lot. This team's going to be in pass-happy game scripts, more likely than not. So Curtis Samuel, I know we had an outburst from him early in the year last year. It didn't quite persist. We know the guy can play. Remember, he got signed to a pretty good deal by Washington. He has multiple applications. He scored on that jet sweep against Philadelphia. So I think he's the guy, not a break the bank guy, but worth as much as Jeff Wilson as far as like his chance to really help your season, especially in 3 wide receiver flex leagues, PPR. Josh Downs coming on, still the number 3 receiver in terms of snaps, but probably the most attractive target, the easiest target, at least underneath in the middle of the field. And maybe he could continue to outproduce Michael Pittman with Gardner Minshew. Although, again, not exactly an easy schedule coming up, Cleveland, New Orleans for them. But again, that could make more targets go to Josh Downs, try to move the sticks. Joshua Palmer might have been dropped. And remember, he had that big catch. Here's how you gain trust from your quarterback. Make a deep catch on a short yardage play that the team decides to call long pass to basically clinch the game. Joshua Palmer did that going into the bye. Going to play Dallas this week. Elijah Moore might have been dropped. Now, again, Deshaun Watson's shoulder hovers over this. The Browns do actually seem intent on getting Elijah Moore going. Now, that might be harder with Walker or DTR quarterback. When Deshaun Watson's healthy, Elijah Moore could take off. They're going to keep trying. KJ Osborne, feeling kind of lukewarm about Osborne. Now, let's talk about Justin Jefferson really quickly.
Ugh.
That's 4 weeks at least. However, Adam Schefter, and Cecil, you know Schefter, he was your mentor, right? So when Adam Schefter says, and something to the effect of like, and if the Vikings are losing, because also what enters the picture, everybody's thinking the same thing, like Kirk Cousins trade. And he has a no trade clause. And Will Raggett, I'm sorry if I'm not saying his name, Ragatz, put out there, well, Kirk Cousins might not feel like learning a new offense in the middle of the season, which is fair. He's a human being. He might be like, I don't feel like it. I don't want to get traded. I can say I don't want to get traded. Next year, I'll figure out my new team, and I'll get to pick my new team instead of you just telling me who my new team is or only having 1 or 2 choices, the Jets. So there's all these things that could potentially lead to, by the time Justin Jefferson's healthy, I'm making air quotes because it's NFL season, he's like, you know what? Let's just kick it forward to next year. So when Adam Schefter just puts that out there like that, Cease, do you think that he has some knowledge that is making him put it out there? Or is he really just like you or me and speculating because it just makes sense?
He has the knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah. So, maybe I shouldn't be lukewarm about KJ Osborne because now you're looking at potentially the rest of the season. But maybe with Nick Mullins, maybe not with Nick Mullins. And also, here's the problem. Here's the thing we do in fantasy football too often. Justin Jefferson's out. That means redistribute these targets, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what if the whole pie shrinks? Because Justin Jefferson was the straw that stirred the drink and made this pass offense able to be proficient, not just by the production that he created for himself, but the way he loosened everything up. And now all of a sudden with Alexander Madison's not scaring anybody. Now, well, see, they play Chicago. That's a good litmus test, right? Like if they can't move the ball well against Chicago, you're really going to be happy going after KJ Osborne on the waiver wire. But the opportunities there, I feel like I'm underrating Josh Reynolds just because of it's Detroit's offense. And they were just praising him again. But Jameson Williams will probably, they hope he can grow into a larger role. Amon-Ra St. Brown will be back. Sam Laporte is not going anywhere. So it's just going to be harder for Reynolds to stand out. But he's a good player in a good offense, and maybe I'm underestimating him. Maybe he should be higher. Maybe he should even be higher than Curtis Samuel. Certainly, if injuries continue to give him opportunity, you'll be happy you had him. And then finally, Rashee Rice. Maybe he's saving the best for last, Cease. we've got these two forces. Okay, here's what I'll toss out there about Rice. He's 4th in snaps among the Kansas City wide receivers. He's 1st in targets among the Kansas City wide receivers.
Mm-hmm.
And the narrative we're getting from them is he's learning. He's learning. Doesn't it just make sense that he will earn more snaps? And again, earning targets on a high percentage of his snaps already, he will become a fantasy relevant receiver. It seems to follow that that's what's going to happen. Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney, not exactly distinguishing themselves with opportunity every week, basically. So Rice, again, might be the guy we look back on and say, this is fun, Cease. It's week 6, but there's 7 or 8, 9 guys this week that we may look back and say, that was the key pickup. In week 6, if you went in on this player, that changed your season. And there's so many possibilities. And then if we start talking about the trade market, like your conversation about Denver, this is a fun crossroads in your fantasy season. Do something. If you like playing fantasy football, do something this week. Make a trade. Make some bids. Shuffle the end of your bench, because there's a lot going on. The plate tectonics are in motion, so you should be too.
And Rice plays the Broncos on Thursday.
Oh, okay.
Cheat
20
code.
to 40%, 50%.
Cheat code, baby. Cheat code. That's why when Friday happens, as we go through the rest of your list, upgrades, downgrades, waiver wire report, not much, but Quentin Johnston is there at 3 to 5%. We'll see if he can do more. And I'm going to throw out some love for Marvin Mims and Brandon Johnson if one or both, Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, get traded. And there are other destinations. There's more teams than just Denver. So think of that. Be very fluid with your thoughts. Be like
it's
water.
a Bronco show. It's a Bronco show. See, so this really quickly, right? We're dunking on the Broncos, right? It's
Everybody's dunking on the Broncos.
Every day. Every day we're dunking on the Broncos, right? But one thing we should not be dunking on is the offense is not bad, and Russell Wilson's not bad. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's terrible last week, but yeah.
I mean, they're not the reason this is happening is the defense to an extent. The offense hasn't helped, but the collapse has been on the defensive side of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
So Brandon Johnson is the number 2 receiver. He could do something. Why not? Quentin Johnston, and see, this is another walk down narrative street because again, bye weeks figuring in here because maybe Quentin Johnson, someone picked him up, and then I can't carry him through the bye. He didn't do much in his first game as the number 3 receiver anyway. Bye weeks are important because players get a chance to get healthy. Bye weeks are important because players might get dropped, like we're talking about, but also because teams can take a breath and reset priorities. Right? They can review what's been going on. I mean, you can be reflective and self-assess during a bye in a way you can't at any other week of the season because you're preparing for a game. And with Quentin Johnston, because we've talked about this, Cease, there's what Quentin Johnston can do, and then there's what, if you make a project out of it, maybe eventually he'll do this later on. Be some guy that wins big contested catches downfield, right? He looks like he should be able to do that. It's like Jonathan Baldwin. He looks like he should be able to do that, but he doesn't do it consistently. So, and maybe instead of asking him to do that, maybe they could see him more as a big slot, see him more as a run after catch threat and not a downfield receiver. Do you think it's appropriate to ask questions about teams making these kinds of assessments, or do you think the Chargers have already shown us they're putting a square peg in a round hole?
Yeah, square peg, round hole, but we'll see. We'll see, Bloom. That's what we got. We got any more wide receivers? Or are we done?
That's it.
Okay, that's it. Let's go to the Monday injury rounds, and there's inversion ankle sprain for Travis Kelce.
Right.
Okay, there you go. Kelce, will he play on Thursday? Short week. This is like the Jalen Waddle situation. Jalen Waddle, he might have been able to play against the Broncos, but why would he? Why would you have to? We got to be at full strength. No, you don't. You can be half asleep. So does Travis Kelce need to play on Thursday against the Broncos? No. So maybe they give him a rest. I'm not sure. We'll see. Again, we're recording this Tuesday morning. Dalton Kincaid, concussion, projecting week 7 return. But upgrades, downgrades, waiver wire reports takes us to the tight end position. And speaking of injuries and tight ends, there's Logan Thomas. But 10 to 20% for him. David Njoku, 7 to 15%. Let's start with those two before we get to the rest here, Bloom.
Yeah, Travis Kelce. The gasp when he slipped. The gasp around the football world. It's almost like Kelce somehow at the tight end position, which is so brutal, has kept his level of play up at a level. How many years was it he hadn't missed a game going into this year? Like 7 or something? Something ridiculous like that. And I think everyone's wondering, like, how long can it last, and are scared that any week now we might see that happen. Doesn't seem like it did. Logan Thomas, Sam Howell is going to keep chucking it often to Logan Thomas. It's not exactly nutritious in terms of wins and losses for Washington, often garbage time maybe. Still, Logan Thomas, the points all count the same. So he's over his concussion, certainly this week against Atlanta. You're liking that. And David Njoku might have been dropped. He had, if it is the backup quarterback, he was one of the few, he had 6 catches going into the bye after suffering burns and a fire pit accident. He still played. The question was, I got to keep saying it, Cease, because can he put his helmet on over the burns? And he did, and he played. That deserves a spot on my fantasy team. I'll just go ahead and wrap up the tight end, Cease. Dalton Schultz. What you saw last week was Tank Dell goes out with concussion. Nico Collins blanketed by A.J. Terrell, so Dalton Schultz gets some targets. Maybe it'll happen this week against New Orleans. We'll see if Tank Dell's going to play. Marshawn Lattimore would be on Nico Collins. Tyler Conklin, he's got something there with Zach Wilson, something that's working in the Jets offense. Gerald Everett coming back off the bye. It sounds like Donald Parham's wrist is okay, but Parham does tend to get hurt. And again, opportunity opened up in this Chargers offense with Mike Williams going out. Mike Williams, another one, Steve. Geez, that seems like forever ago. Oh my,
Yeah.
Mike Williams.
Yeah.
And then Johnny Smith. Now let's watch this because Smith fumbled, and Kyle Pitts, I think, was a little more prominent in Desmond Ritter's eyes after that. And maybe this can kind of correct itself to where we thought it was going to be, where Pitts is dominating tight end targets. Not that Johnny Smith can't do something with those targets. And maybe Johnny Smith continues. I mean, it's Washington, right? So if you play Johnny Smith this week, just saying it's Washington, and we saw it last week. Cole Kmet scored. Obviously, you're playing Kyle Pitts too. Johnny Smith could do something. So that is, and again, Cease, the cruel joke that it was Johnny Smith outproducing Kyle Pitts. That's just like a little child joke, like why the chicken crossed the road after the injury carnage we've seen this week.
Yeah, it's carnage. The blood and carnage reminds me of Robert Downey Jr. and Natural Born Killers, like the blood and carnage. Yes, yeah. So, was that his comeback role, or did he have a comeback role before that? I can't remember, but
I felt like Iron Man was his comeback role.
I'm gonna get a hot pepper. I can't finish the rest of that, but sorry, Joe. Joe probably's never watched Natural Born Killers, I would guess.
I still can't believe when I watched that one. Sometimes I can't believe that movie got made. It was kind of like an inversion point, like through the looking glass point for popular culture,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Oh, we got a whole show based around that, but we'll continue on. And I think Mahai Luke had some samples he was going to say. You can always email us.
Mm-hmm.
It's our name at footballguys.com. So Lammey at footballguys.com, Bloom at footballguys.com. So yeah, man. Yeah, it's all good, baby. You can tell where I'm at in the chat room because I think the chat room was talking about Keaton Mitchell. We didn't talk about Keaton Mitchell.
There's so many names. I mean, half a unit, like you like to say, he's I don't know how healthy he is yet. It's going to be crowded in the Ravens backfield no matter what. There's always going to be 3 guys, whether it's Hill, who actually looks like he had some juice last week, he also fumbled. Gordon, Gus Edwards. It's not like this isn't a situation like Denver where McLaughlin can really distinguish himself. I don't think he's going to distinguish himself in the same way, but McLaughlin does it, so there's the way.
Yeah, there is the way. This is the way. Now, this is what we do on this show. And if you're new, thank you for watching. We've seen our YouTube channel grow and grow and grow, consistent growth, which is good. That's what you want. We appreciate all of you. If you've commented in the chat room, make sure to comment below. But there's a few things that we do. First off, you notice if someone says the magic word every day, I'm going to do this because I'm like Pavlov's dogs. And it's just like, what? Vic Fangio. Although he's so smiley, we need to get him a Dolphins hat. Somebody fix that for me because I'm not good at Photoshop. Fix it for me. Give me a Dolphins hat or a little anti-circle around the Broncos. Anyway, so that's one thing we do. But there's another thing we do just on this show and just during the regular season. So join in with us because you're listening, but you're one of us. You're with us here in the Audible fam, the Football Guys channel, YouTube, like, comment, share, blah, 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 blah. This is where you get to join in. And I wish I could do this to a head coach. I'm not going to tell you which head coach, but there's a head coach that maybe isn't the nicest guy. Maybe thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. Just ask him. And oh boy, it'd be like, I think, was it in Madden? You could change your coach. I can't remember. They used to have a coach game. Speaking of games, Bloom, there was a video game from EA Sports, I believe. It's in the game. That was about the coach, like just the coach. Anyway, wish I could do that. I can't do that, but I can do it here in my mind yet. So you can join in with us. And this is where we get to the audience participation because there is none other. There's none better, none higher than that of our friends at Public Enemy. So if you've got players that you're just sick of, you're done. I'm done. I'm out. Blanket, I'm out. Sorry, Joe. I want you to scream it to the heavens, and I want the stories of where you're at, okay? Because maybe you run across someone who's in the Audible fam. They might be listening at the same time as you. So whether you're walking the dog, that's not something naughty. Get it out of your mind. Whether you're at the gym, you got to be careful with these things. Like
anything. Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, but there also maybe never. A cigar is never a cigar.
I was in the pool. Either way, wherever you're at, I want you to scream it to the heavens with us because now it is time to cue the Chuck D. Boom, we glad shut him down.
I got to ask you this before we do this. I was just looking up some stuff on Vic Fangio because he's so present on our show now. Now that you're covering Sean Payton, how does that change when you look back on what it was like to cover Vic Fangio's team?
There's different types of grumpy. There's grumpy because you just want to get back to the football and you hate talking to the media. And then there's grumpy of like, I'm above you.
Oh,
you're my servants.
Yeah.
You can figure out which one is which.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't realize until I just looked this up that I didn't remember that Vic Fangio's origin story in the NFL is basically the Dome Patrol, that he was the linebacker.
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome.
Oh, yeah. One way I got in good with Vic, and I have not gotten good with Sean. Maybe it's because I have a big mouth. Maybe it's because Sean just doesn't let anybody in unless you're, what's his name from USA Today. But anyway, like one way I got in good with Vic was talking to him about Pat Swilling.
Yeah.
Like I love Ricky Jackson and Vaughn Johnson and Sam Mills, and Dome Patrol. That was Vic's boy. In 1992, the only linebacker core that all made it as Pro Bowl starters, not these stupid replacement.
Right. It used to mean something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah. 92. That was significant. If they'd only had a quarterback, Saints might have won something.
And he's never. And speaking of, Fangio doesn't have a ring. He's never been on a Super Bowl. Close. Been lots of teams that were close, but he doesn't have a ring.
Speaking of New Orleans, he was the DC when the 49ers had the lights go out.
Yep.
Against the Baltimore Ravens.
That's so perfect, Cease. Like if I told you there was a Super Bowl where there was a power outage during the Super Bowl, you would not have to guess more than once to know which city that happened in. Cue the Chuck D on Daniel Jones. Probably, ceiling games could come with Barkley back if the offensive line gets healthier. We'll see. Mac Jones, obviously. Zach Wilson, if you're thinking there's a glimmer there. I'm not. So if you're looking at what carnage, right? Wide receiver, running backs. Here's someone I'm not attached to, Cease, to pick up one of those guys. Dak Prescott. I don't think it's going to. It was a humiliating game. There may be some decent games for him for fantasy. This is a defense-led team. Okay. Maybe he'll have a big game against Chargers. Maybe I regret that. But if I have to drop him to get Rashee Rice, okay, I have to drop him to get Roshan Johnson or something like that. Well, yeah, I'm not attached to Dak Prescott. Other guys, we're definitely cue the Chuck D on, other than the obvious injuries. Michael Wilson, it didn't happen, and you just got to. I know sometimes it can be ridiculous, right? See, if you just listen to all these waiver wire shows in a row, we're like, cue the Chuck D on this player, and next pick this player up, next cue the Chuck D on this player, and next pick this player up, right? I mean, that's fantasy football. That's fantasy football. It changes week to week, and Michael Wilson was the flavor of the week last week. And I feel like Cortland Sutton. Now, C said he can still play, so maybe I should have said Jerry Jeudy. Maybe Jerry Judy's the one to say, don't be attached to him. Cortland Sutton. The other thing, of course, with Cortland Sutton, if he gets traded, C's just on top of your head, knee-jerk reaction. Who's more likely to get traded, Sutton or Jeudy?
Sutton.
Okay, so like, if he goes to Carolina, it's like confetti,
Well, Judy's been liking all of the Carolina play. He's been following Carolina.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, either way,
is Dave Tepper crazy? Like, and that's the thing. Like, you work on Dave Tepper. You don't work on the GM. You just get Tepper all riled up. Like, you get a first rounder. He's the best route runner in the history of route running.
That's brilliant. Oh my gosh, that's really smart, like psyops for a player to do when the owner has their hands on the steering wheel. You just the owner probably feels all special, like, oh, the player's talking to me because he knows I know football.
Right. I know
he knows
I'm
I
the
know
guy.
football.
I mean, he thinks and I do. It's like selling art to like billionaires, right? It's just a picture of a green splash, and like, well, it evokes such an emotion.
Right. Exit through the gift shop. You've seen it, yeah, Banksy.
Yes.
Oh yeah, it's perfect. I mean, it's all right there. F for fake too, Orson Welles. And then Hunter Henry. Someone asked in the chat room, cue the Chuck D. Yeah, cue the Chuck D on Hunter Henry. Cue the Chuck. Why did we ever think? I feel so bad ever recommending a Patriots player on the waiver wire this year. I did twice with Bourne and then Henry because it seemed like, well, with Bill O'Brien, at least they can competently throw the ball conservatively. No, well, depending on who they're playing, they can't do that. Although this week they're playing Las Vegas. Not that Jordan Love was any good against Las Vegas. That's another thing we'll talk about. But yeah, I think on the whole, as far as cueing the Chuck D, I just think if it flickers in your mind, like, well, I have to drop this player to get this player, then do it. Don't be attached to some of these players unless if a player is someone that is quote unquote undroppable, then when you even consider dropping them, something in your brain kicks in and says, no, I'm not going to do that, hence our next segment.
Yes, hence the next segment that is the opposite, the yin and the yang. You've got to let people go, and sometimes you just can't help yourself, but you've got to hold on. And Bloom, who are some of those week 6 hold-ons?
Yeah, maybe it goes without saying. I mean, I just think these players have earned Achane, Connor, Herbert, Richardson, Justin Jefferson. Obviously you're holding on to these guys, and that's really it. I think that the hold on here this week, Cease, is you hold on to what you enjoy. Especially if your team was one of the teams doing well, you just hold on to why you liked fantasy football in the first place, why it was something engrossing for you in the first place, and accept the challenge. Again, winning in the NFL, winning in fantasy football, winning in life. It's not pretty. It's not based on style points.
You got to say that in your Gary V voice, though. Winning in life is not flippin' easy.
And I don't mean winning. And I think folks know, like, I don't mean winning like winning. I don't want to fall into that very American mindset of like all that really matters are things we can classify into winners and losers. Because here's the show we really need to do, Cease. It's just like leaving the whole winners losers paradigm behind us. But that's kind of tough when we live in American culture, and also we're doing fantasy football. But it's when you win. The real win. I can't do. I don't know. I've never listened to Gary. I've never listened to him, so I don't even know how to imitate him. I'm not pulling from anywhere in my psyche when I'm doing Gary V. The real win is whenever you're doing something that makes you feel connected to the world in some way, or connected even to something in yourself. Doing the puzzles of fantasy football and putting to the test your observations and your knowledge and your ability to predict the future against everybody else's. So when you watch football on Sundays, when you engage with other people in your league and hang out, it adds something. And that's when you're winning. So just, and at the same time, also cease, also is like quit smoking or quit high fructose corn syrup, bring it full circle, right? Like, and if you're like, nah, you know what, I can't believe this fantasy football's stupid. I drafted all the right players, and now I'm gonna have to like figure out which Arizona running back to pick up. I've got better things to do. You're probably right. You probably have better things to do.
Yeah. So there you go. All right. That is a wrap for today's program. We certainly appreciate each and every one of you out there for helping us grow our YouTube channel and spreading the word through your likes and your comments and your shares and your subscribes to our YouTube channel. Got a great lineup all week long, multiple shows, multiple personalities that are here for you to talk fantasy football and, keep it light and sweet, baby. That's what we do, Bloom. I don't know, where are we at with that? We light and sweet enough? We okay?
I mean, well, they're the ones that tell us. They tell us whether we're light and sweet enough. But yeah, I mean, that's fantasy football is supposed to be light and sweet. It's fantasy freaking football. I mean, it's right there in the name. It's a game. It's a game based on a game. So we got to keep it light and sweet, or why are we even here?
Yeah. What is this for? What was I supposed to learn?
Right.
That's the show we should really do. Anyway, It is the Audible Sorry Joe Plus coming soon to an imagination near you. Anyway, we love you guys. We appreciate you all. And hey, thanks. Like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you never miss a vid. He's Sigmund Bloom. Follow him at Sigmund Bloom. The show's at the Audible. I am at Cecil Lammey saying thank you very much. As always, stay tuned and would you please stay frosty,